There's a creature in the ocean that breaks the fundamental rule of existence. Everything that lives must die. Plants die, animals die, bacteria die. Cells wear out, DNA degrades, and eventually every living thing on Earth stops functioning and returns to the elements it came from. Except one. A jellyfish, smaller than your pinky fingernail, has figured out how to cheat death. Not by living longer, not by healing faster, but by reverse aging. When this jellyfish gets old, injured or stressed, it doesn't die. It turns itself back into a baby. And then it grows up again. And it can do this forever. This is Turritopsis dohrnii, the immortal jellyfish. And it's rewriting everything we thought we knew about aging, death, and the limits of biological life. For most of human history, immortality was a myth. A story. Something gods had but mortals could only dream about. And biologically it made sense. Aging is universal. Cells divide, telomeres shorten, DNA accumulates damage, proteins misfold, and eventually the machinery of life breaks down. You can slow it. You can delay it. You can optimize your health to squeeze out a few extra years. But you can't stop it. Or so we thought. And then in the 1990s, a German marine biology student named Christian Sommer was studying hydrozoans in the Mediterranean. He collected some Turritopsis specimens, kept them in petri dishes, observed their life cycles, standard research, nothing groundbreaking, except he noticed something impossible. When the adult jellyfish got stressed, water temperature changed, food ran out, the dish got too crowded, they didn't die. They sank to the bottom and they transformed. The bell-shaped body collapsed inward. The tentacles retracted and were reabsorbed. The entire adult structure broke down into a blob of tissue. And then that blob attached to the bottom of the dish and turned into a polyp, not a dead jellyfish. A polyp. The juvenile stage. The beginning of the life cycle. The jellyfish had age-reversed itself back to childhood. Sommer brought this finding to his professor, who didn't believe him. So they tested it again and again. Every time the same result. Adult jellyfish, when stressed, would revert to the polyp stage, heal, and then grow back into adults. The paper was published in 1996, and almost nobody paid attention. It was too weird, too impossible. It had to be a mistake or a misidentification or contamination. But it wasn't. Turritopsis dohrnii can actually do this. And we're only now beginning to understand how. Let's start with what a normal jellyfish life cycle looks like. Most jellyfish have two distinct life stages. Stage 1, the polyp. A tiny stationary creature that looks like a miniature sea anemone, attached to rocks or coral, waving tentacles to catch food. Stage 2, the medusa. The free-swimming bell-shaped jellyfish we recognize, drifting through the ocean, reproducing sexually. The polyp produces medusae through a process called budding or strobilation. The medusa grows, matures, reproduces, and then dies. That's it. One-way trip from polyp to medusa to death. Except Turritopsis dohrnii has added a third option. When the medusa gets old or stressed or injured, it triggers a process called transdifferentiation. This is where things get genuinely bizarre. Transdifferentiation is when specialized cells that have already committed to being one type of tissue, transform into a completely different type. In most animals, this doesn't happen. A muscle cell is a muscle cell. A nerve cell is a nerve cell. Once a cell differentiates during development, it's locked into that identity for life. But Turritopsis can unlock that identity. It can take an adult muscle cell and turn it back into a stem cell, and then turn that stem cell into a nerve cell, or a digestive cell, or anything else it needs. The jellyfish essentially hits the reset button on its entire body. Every cell reverts to an earlier, more flexible state, and then reorganizes into the structure of a polyp. It's not healing, it's not regeneration, and it's de-aging. The jellyfish becomes young again. And here's the part that breaks your brain. It retains no memory of being an adult. When the polyp grows back into a medusa, it's not the same individual. It's genetically identical, but it's functionally a new organism. The original jellyfish didn't survive. It transformed into something else. And yet, from a genetic perspective, it never died. The DNA continues. The lineage persists. The individual, as we understand individuality, ceases to exist and is replaced by a younger version of itself. So is it immortal? Or is it dying and being reborn over and over? That's the question scientists are still arguing about. But here's what we know for certain. Turritopsis dohrnii doesn't age the way other animals do. There's no upper limit to its lifespan. It doesn't accumulate the typical markers of aging. It doesn't slow down or weaken or become more vulnerable to disease over time. Every time it reverts to a polyp, it resets the aging clock. And theoretically, it can do this forever. In lab conditions, researchers have observed individual specimens going through the cycle more than 10 times. Polyp to medusa to polyp to medusa, over and over, with no sign of degradation. Some estimates suggest that if a Turritopsis could avoid predators, disease and environmental disaster, it could live indefinitely. Not just centuries, not just millennia, forever. As long as the ocean exists, the jellyfish could exist. Now, before you start imagining immortal jellyfish taking over the ocean, there's a catch. Most Turritopsis don't make it. In the wild, they get eaten a lot. They're tiny, only about 4.5 millimeters in diameter. They're slow, they're defenseless. They're perfect prey for fish, sea turtles, other jellyfish, basically anything with a mouth. The immortality trick only works if you survive long enough to use it, and most don't. But the ones that do, they're functionally unkillable by age, and that has scientists absolutely obsessed. Because if we can figure out how Turritopsis does this, we might be able to apply it to humans, not to make humans immortal. That's probably impossible and definitely a bad idea, but to reverse aging in specific tissues, to regenerate damaged organs, to reset cells that have become cancerous or dysfunctional. Right now, researchers are studying the genetic mechanisms that allow Turritopsis to perform transdifferentiation. They've identified several genes that are highly active during the reversal process. Genes involved in stem cell maintenance, genes involved in DNA repair, genes involved in cellular reprogramming. Some of these genes exist in humans too. We just don't use them the same way. Our cells lock into their identities and stay there. But what if we could unlock them? What if we could take an old, damaged heart cell and revert it to a stem cell state, then reprogram it into a young, healthy heart cell? What if we could do that with neurons in Alzheimer's patients? With pancreatic cells in diabetics? With any tissue that's failing due to age or disease? That's the promise of Turritopsis research, not immortality, but targeted age reversal at the cellular level. And we're closer to that than most people realize. In 2012, Japanese researcher Shinya Yamanaka won the Nobel Prize for discovering that adult cells can be reprogrammed into stem cells using just 4 specific genes. He wasn't studying jellyfish, but the principle is the same. Cells aren't permanently locked into one identity. Under the right conditions, they can be reset. Turritopsis has been doing this naturally for millions of years. We're just now figuring out how to do it artificially. But here's where things get complicated. Because immortality, even at the cellular level, has consequences. Cancer is what happens when cells refuse to die. They keep dividing, keep growing, ignore the signals telling them to stop. Turritopsis can reverse age without becoming cancerous, which suggests it has some mechanism for controlling cell division during transdifferentiation. If we can figure out that mechanism, we solve one of medicine's biggest problems. If we can't, we risk turning age reversal therapy into a cancer accelerator. So the research is slow, careful, because the stakes are enormous. But every year, we learn more. And every year, The possibility of controlled age reversal gets a little less like science fiction and a little more like medicine. Now, here's the strangest part of this whole story. Turritopsis dohrnii isn't rare. It's not confined to one location, it's spreading. Originally found in the Mediterranean, it's now been spotted in oceans all over the world. Japan, the Caribbean, the Atlantic, the Pacific. It's likely been spreading via ballast water in ships. Jellyfish polyps attached to hulls get carried across oceans, establish new populations wherever they're dropped. And because they're functionally immortal, a single jellyfish introduced to a new environment can potentially create an entire population. One jellyfish that refuses to die, producing polyps, which produce more medusae, which can revert to polyps, which produce more medusae forever. Some researchers have started calling it a silent invasion. Not because Turritopsis is harmful. It's not. It's too small to disrupt ecosystems. It doesn't outcompete native species. It just exists quietly in oceans around the world, being immortal. But it raises an interesting question. What happens when an immortal species spreads globally? Does it change the rules of ecology? Does it alter the balance of marine ecosystems in ways we can't predict? We don't know yet. Nobody's been studying this long enough to see the long-term effects. But the fact that an immortal organism is quietly colonizing the world's oceans while we barely pay attention is both fascinating and slightly unnerving. And here's the final twist. Turritopsis might not be the only one, and there are hints that other jellyfish species might have similar abilities. They just haven't been studied as extensively. And if jellyfish can do this, what about other organisms? Are there other creatures out there that have solved aging and death in ways we haven't discovered yet? Deep-sea sponges that live for thousands of years without showing signs of aging. Certain species of flatworms that can regenerate entire bodies from tiny fragments. Hydra, a freshwater polyp that appears not to age at all. And we've been so focused on studying organisms that age like we do that we've mostly ignored the ones that don't. And now we're realizing those organisms might hold the keys to solving problems we thought were unsolvable. The immortal jellyfish isn't just a curiosity. It's proof that the rules we thought were absolute, that everything ages, everything dies, aren't actually rules. They're just patterns, and patterns can be broken. Turritopsis dohrnii broke them millions of years ago, and now we're trying to figure out how it did it. Not to become immortal ourselves, but to extend health span, to reverse the damage of aging in specific tissues, to give people more years of healthy, functional life before decline sets in. That's the realistic goal, and it's closer than you think. If this changed how you think about aging, or made you realize that death might not be as inevitable as we've always assumed, leave a comment. Tell me what other impossible creatures you want me to cover, because the ocean is full of organisms that break the rules of biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. Subscribe if you want more videos like this, because next time we're diving into the mantis shrimp, the creature with the fastest punch in the animal kingdom, and eyes that can see colours we can't even imagine. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the deep.